Greetings, and welcome to the Thirsty Mage, a pub where a group of friends get together for a pint and discuss our favorite RPGs. Tonight's episode is a special review edition, where we have a spoiler-free discussion about the latest release from Atlas, The Alliance Alive. We've got a full table tonight, starting with the co-host of the Thirsty Mage and the co-host of the Talk Nintendo podcast, Mr. Casey Gibson.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Pleasure to have you as always. And what drink have you ordered from the Mage tonight?
Well, nothing crazy as normal, but we've got a nice cup of Folgers coffee and a nice glass of water for afterwards. That going hard tonight.
Also joining us, the owner of Nintendo World Report and the gatekeeper for all of our reviews, Mr. Neil Ronahan.
None shall pass.
And are you sticking with the Namaste tonight, or do you got
no, I grabbed a Yard's Love Stout, which might be antithetical to some of my feelings about this game thus far. But it's a good beer. I recommend it. Yards, they're outside of Philly, I believe. I like they have it's a Ben Franklin themed Tavern Spruce beer that's very good. Very much recommend that. If I don't even know how far the reach is outside of the East Coast here, but they're a good brewery.
That's good. No, a good stout will always cure what ails you. So. Mm-hmm. And rounding out our table, first-time patron at the Mage, and the Canadian representation of Radio Free Nintendo, Mr. Guillaume Viette.
Hi. I might get kicked out of the pub by the pub owner because I'm just drinking, boring old water. I did have, the in-laws were visiting last week, and they left one can of Coors Light. And I drank I drank the Coors Light last night watching Thelma and Louise. I did not know I would be recording this, so it's not a very good beer, so it's probably just as well,
Well, my friend once said, what's the difference between water and Coors Light, really, anyway?
Moose piss is the difference. I have an uncle who will inhale Coors Light, which it's good because it's low alcohol content and he's minorly an alcoholic, so that's for the best. Yeah. But it's a terrible tasting beer.
Well, you know what? I actually don't mind it. I don't drink all that often, but I would prefer a Coors Light to a Bud Light. But,
oh boy,
I mean, it's not like those are very good. So
I feel like maybe the fact that we're having a discussion over which is better, a crappy beer or a crappy beer, might get us all kicked out of this pub.
Yeah, we all know Keystone's where it's at anyway.
Yeah, Natty Light, PBR. PBR is my favorite crap beer of choice.
Oh, the Peebers, man. Yeah, I could go for a Peeber.
Well, we got some great pubs great breweries around me, but I ended up going with one from Belgium. I got a Grimbergen.
Ooh,
I like the
which
name.
It's a double amber, which is I really enjoy it, and it's a little less alcohol than I'm used to. It's 6.5, so it's a light for me.
It's no Coors Light, I mean, but
I'm trying to think what this Yards is that I'm having, because it might be potent, but I don't know. It doesn't say easily. I'll interject if I find it.
But it's American, so
5.5. It's not that bad.
Modest. That's good.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, enough beer talk. Let's get into what we're all here to talk about, which is the brand new RPG from Atlas that's releasing. Well, it depends on when you're listening. If you were listening on a Monday, it's going to release tomorrow. Otherwise, it released on March 27th, and that is The Alliance Alive.
I'd argue that even if you're listening to this on Monday, it still releases on July 27th.
July 27th?
March 27th.
One way or another, it's March 27th.
I don't know what month it is.
No, you've got Octopath.
I've got my future child on the brain. That's what I got. Yeah. My child, Octopath Traveler Ronahan. That's my kid's name. Due dates basically when Octopath comes out. So
we know your kid's gonna be a thirst. They're gonna have one of those 8 names, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You know what? It's a great name, honey.
Well, at least they'll grow up, get the early stages. What looks to be a very good RPG. Get them started out right.
Yep. Playing that with a newborn in my hands. I'm stoked.
Cool. Well, before we get into our impressions of the Alliance Alive, maybe we'll just talk a little bit about the development team and what came before it, so that we can kind of have an idea of what we ended up with.
So, this game, it comes from I don't really know how to pronounce it. Furyu.
I suppose so. Yeah, that's as good a guess as any, I'm sure.
And they did. I mean, if you're up on your 3DS RPGs, they very clearly also made The Legend of Legacy, which the graphical style between The Legend of Legacy and Alliance Alive is almost identical. And it's very much Alliance.
The music is almost identical. Also.
It's the same composer, and I adore the music in The Legend of Legacy and Alliance Alive. Very, very good music. But for people who might not be familiar with them, well, pretty much you need to know your 3DS RPGs. They also did Unchained Blades, which came out on the 3DS eShop a number of years ago. And they've primarily done a lot of stuff that hasn't really come over. There's a Beyblade game in their past. And going older in their Lost Dimension on PS3. I remember that game. Yeah.
A whole lot of Japanese games.
But they haven't done that. Yeah, a lot of Japanese games, but they've done a lot of RPG work, and they made The Legend of Legacy with this developer Cattle Call, which seems to be like kind of a Japanese company that just assists with RPG development. Cattle Call also worked on, because we're recording this the day before you can't put points on your Wii shop anymore. Cattle Call developed Space Invaders Get Even, which was a WiiWare game. They also did, they apparently worked on the port of Dragon Quest IV on DS. So, like, they have a little bit of a pedigree working on RPGs in the past. And then Grezzo, who we know from working on the 3DS Zelda remakes, Triforce Heroes, and most recently, Ever Oasis, also helped with development on Alliance Alive and The Legend of Legacy. The director is Masataka Matsuura. Why are you doing this to me, David? I don't know how to pronounce his names.
I think it's a diphthong, like Matsuura. Like you pronounce both
I
U's,
left it to you because I promised Seren I would no longer pronounce a Japanese name for the rest of my life.
See,
You do the short
which you'll
straw
find out
today.
on Tuesday.
but I mean, he's a pedigree. He's got a background with working on Saga games. So does the artist Kyoji Koizumi, and he worked on Ever Oasis. I think Koizumi might be an employee of Grezzo, but I'm not 100% sure on that. For the Alliance Alive, what's different from that in The Legend of Legacy is that Yoshitaka Murayama, who helped write the Suikoden series, he came on to write the story for the Alliance Alive, because one of the knocks against The Legend of Legacy was that, like, the story wasn't that great. As David noted here, the director didn't want to make a direct sequel, but wanted to keep elements from The Legend of Legacy and improve on criticisms for the first game, which one of the key ones there was a lack of story. From my vantage point from playing the Alliance Alive and noticing how the story isn't really engaging me, I don't think they really solved that problem. I think they just added new problems.
Yeah, a bit of a swing and a miss on the story.
Yeah,
it doesn't. I mean, they give you a little bit, to keep it going, but it never really truly, at least like you said, for you and for me, never really engaged. Made me too engaged in it, and it was more just sort of there to push the events, I guess, forward. But
I feel like there's potential in the setup for the Alliance Alive, and I'm only about I think around 10 hours in, so maybe there's a great resolution from talking to David and Casey. I kind of doubt it, but it's just like I think there's a setup for a cool story. It just doesn't really seem that they kind of deliver on that much, and it's disappointing to me because one of the things that I really liked about The Legend of Legacy is that it was there wasn't as much fluff around that game. It was very mechanics focused. And like, I feel like the Alliance Alive is overwhelmed with mechanics and a middling story.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not that far into the game, but the game has basically started over 3 times so far.
It's so weird.
You take control of a group of 2 characters, and then you leave them and you control 2 other characters who I don't know if this is a spoiler, but eventually they're going to meet up with the first ones. And then another group of like 3 characters. And it's weird because it's always like a male and female pairing. And I feel like all the males and all the females have all the same kind of relationship dynamic. And it's funny because I didn't know that the guy who wrote Suikoden wrote the story for this, but it's like every woman in this game is Nanami from Suikoden 2, I feel. Like there's always this kind of, they're always the ones kind of gung-ho about going, into the action, and you've got the reluctant boy or man, like sometimes love interest, sometimes like kind of a subordinate following them and like, oh, well, I better go with her if, otherwise she's going to get hurt or something. And it's really weird because you would think that having this many characters, there would be a little bit more variation between personality traits, but I kind of feel like I've been introduced to the same 2 characters like 3 times.
Yeah, like, I mean, I once again haven't really played that much of it, but I have a hard time kind of separating the different groups of characters that I've seen because they do all follow those same archetypes.
Yeah. How many characters were in Legend of Legacy?
So the way that works, you can only have 3. It's 3 characters in a party. I'm basing this off of I reread my review and like kind of tried to freshen my mind about this. So the specifics I might have slightly wrong. Guillaume, correct me if I'm wrong. You have 3 characters in your party. At the start of the game, you select one character. I believe that there are 7 different characters that you can choose from. You select that one character, then you are given 2 other characters in your party randomly. However, if you want to change those characters out, the other characters kind of appear, I think, randomly in the starter town, and you can shift them around. So, like, I think there's a frog character in The Legend of Legacy that was not the character that I picked initially, but I wanted him to be in my party. So I switched it around so the frog guy was in my party.
Yeah, it's been too long. I don't remember the specifics, but yeah, like 3 party character maximum. And yeah, you do see the other characters that you didn't pick in town. I did not remember that you could swap, the people in your party, but maybe that's just because I refused to do it.
Yeah, because you invest so much time. Like, I did it very early on, and even then I had to kind of grind to get the frog guy up to the rest of my party.
It's funny to hear that because there's in this one in Alliance Alive there's 9, well, there's at least 9 that you'll end up with, and I was reading an interview with the director, and they had specifically made the choice to not promote anyone as the main character in the hopes that you would find your favorite and then just kind of lean on them, be invested in them. So it's kind of funny that in Legend of Legacy that you'd literally choose your main character.
Yeah, like, it's tough because I like a lot of what they've done with these 2 games, but I just don't feel it comes together in a way that I think works. But, yeah.
Yeah, for me, sort of doubling back to the story and how it was sort of lackadaisical is just, for me, one of the aspects I thought was most interesting is this aspect of different guilds around the world, and sort of the whole point is to gain an alliance to sort of go on and do anything. I don't, again, get into too many spoilers, but I thought that idea of going and finding these different guilds and sort of uniting them together was sort of an interesting aspect, and then it sort of just seems like they never really run with it as much as I hoped they would have, And I think that was sort of a missed opportunity, especially with how the story is also sort of just there. Like, that could have helped boost up that story a little bit, and to me it just seemed like they sort of just swung and missed a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, they do. I did find the way that they introduced the characters pretty cool, in that you start with your party of 2, like they're escaping the enemy, and all of a sudden there's like these people who are helping them out of the blue, and then like 2 parties later, you are controlling those people who save your first party. And so I thought that was cool. That was kind of a Back to the Future 2 moment where, like you're kind of helping from the sidelines. So there's like clearly like they're doing some experimentation. Maybe it didn't gel completely together, but it does. I don't know. God damn it, they tried.
Yeah, they totally did, and like that's good for trying.
The unfortunate part, like, because I'm at the end now, and in my review, I had actually said that the most intriguing part of the story actually happens at the beginning. And it's basically exactly what you're describing, is that to me, like, the smaller groups were just more interesting because you got to see, like you said, there's a bit of relationship building when you just had the two kind of one-on-one working with each other, and then you kind of see like the other groups come in and see how like one group then starts helping the earlier group that you're dealing with, and then it just kind of keeps going. The thing that I had an issue with is like you get to the point where you have all 9, and then it just seems watered down because they're all just kind of there.
Is it that the game seems to be afraid of like giving too much importance, too much focus to one character?
Well, that's the feeling I got from the director.
Just in case that you haven't picked that up.
The feeling I got from that's the feeling I got, is that there's like, okay, we're not going to elevate any one person really. Like, they each kind of had like you said, there is kind of a blending of the personalities. Like there's, I had to hold in my laughing when you were describing the Sudoku, like the way that the women are like, let's go, and the guys are like, oh, I don't know, because that don't change as you get.
Yeah, that's every character so far, every pair.
Yeah,
in
that's
this
like
game.
a running theme throughout the whole thing. So it's.
This ladies get stuff done.
The ladies want to do shit, and the dudes are like, I don't know, and then they just begrudgingly. Well, I guess this is what we're doing. so that's the running theme. But it in some situations it just kind of felt funny because like they would go to. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but they go somewhere, and there's this conversation, but there's like the 9 of them all there, and it's like, do they all need to be here? Like. I feel like you could have wrote it a bit better so that maybe, some people, like, because like I said, I like that separation at the beginning, and that's kind of it once everybody's together. And I think I would have preferred that separation to kind of see how different characters grow with other characters.
It's a challenge of a lot of RPGs that introduce a big party, because once everybody's together, like, who are you going to play with? Because then that kind of dictates how the story should go. Like, I mean, I think of a lot of Final Fantasy games that kind of build the party over the game, and the most interesting character points are when you're building up that team. And then when you get to the last third of the game, or maybe even the back half, and it's like, all right, well, we already have like our 8 heroes together, and now it's up to you who you're going to use, so we can't really do too much specific story things with these characters. And I mean, like I think Final Fantasy VI is an example of a game that does something very unique in the back half that kind of accounts for how do you handle having all these characters. And in their case, it was just throw them all across the planet. That was their solution. And I think that from what you're saying with the Alliance Alive, it seems like it does a decent job of kind of like introducing you to these pairings, and then once you put everybody together, they don't really know what to do with the full party.
No, that's pretty much the way it goes. And it's the battles later on in the game are designed that if you pick your group of 5, you can't forget about the other 4, or you're gonna pay. So
yeah.
So the design really makes it where it's like, okay, you could pick your favorite, but you have to balance out your entire party. You can't just rely on a few people and hope for them to get you to the end. So you really got to create that balance, and it gives you so you are playing with everybody, which I mean is good, because they all have different skills or different strengths that they kind of. I would say the game they kind of gear you towards like, okay, this person starts off with this ability, so maybe you should just stick with that.
Yeah, I feel like certain characters definitely fell into certain roles as you sort of progressed. And I mean, I think it should also be noted how the game doesn't really do much to tell you a lot of things. And I would say the fact that, like how you mentioned, you're sort of constantly want to have new members, rotating in so they're leveling up and staying, strong. But the game doesn't really tell you that. And luckily, you had jumped out ahead of me in the game and sort of gave me that forewarning to make sure to level up people because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but generally when I play an RPG, I sort of get into okay, these are the 3, 4, 5 people I'm using in my party and just sort of roll with it, have them get strong, all that. And it's easy to sort of forget about that backup party. And if I had not had that warning, man, I mean, I still got beaten up pretty good, even with leveling up everyone. And I could only imagine if I didn't have that warning.
Now, Casey, you're saying leveling up a lot. And of course, this is an RPG tavern, and that's the kind of language we're used to. But it's important to say tell people that there's no leveling up per se in this game, right?
Saga.
Yes,
it's very much kind of inspired by the Saga games or the Final Fantasy Legend games if you grew up like me playing RPGs on the original Game Boy. And so instead of gaining experience points and kind of leveling up linearly like that, I suppose, I guess your actions more or less dictate how your character is growing, and the kind of the upgrades that your character gets seem or kind of obscured for you. Like sometimes I get more SP, more skill points to pull off kind of more advanced moves and spells, and I don't know exactly. Like I didn't use any SP. And for some reason, I still gain, skill points, and so it's unclear. Like the systems are obscured from you, and it makes it hard to figure out exactly how you're supposed to behave in battles. If in order to build up your party. The only kind of constant that seems to in this game seems to be that if you keep using a certain weapon or if you keep punching with your bare fists, you're going to get more skills with the sword or your kind of hand-to-hand combat. But that's the only kind of constant that I've noticed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would just usually, get into an area and start grinding and, sort of just hoping that things would go up, especially HP later on where we get to a certain point and the enemies just sort of do crazy damage in this one spot. So it was just sort of hoping that my character's HP would go up. And I thought that was sort of clever. I like the idea of using different skills and then, awakening further skills. And it would just be sort of random. I guess there are talents, or there might be arts that you can sort of use your points you gain to make that happen more often. But as far as the actual individual stats, I mean, I didn't see any sort of pattern or, any way I recognized to get a specific skill sort of upgraded. I don't know if David or Neil saw a pattern or something.
Some of it depends on what row you're in. So, like, how there's kind of, there's, like, the defense row, the attack row, and the...
Support
Speed/healing.
Oh, no. Let's not get confused here. There are rows, the front, middle, and back row. And there are, what do they call them? Stances? Formations.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No, there are lines and there are positions. So positions are attack, guard, and support. And line is front, middle, and rear. And so the line affects the relative damage, whatever that means, and the position, attack, guard, support. So, it's very complicated. And also there's kind of a little bit of a enemy placement dictates who you can hit with certain attacks, because most attacks you can just aim at one enemy, but some attacks have a wider area where you can. But
there's like splash damage.
Yeah, there's splash damage, and depending on which enemy you aimed at, you're gonna hit fewer or more enemies.
Well, and it's the same with the attack damage too. Like it's funny. There's when you're attacking, you can open a menu that will actually show you where it's like, okay, well, if you're attacking the enemies in the first row, you hit them for 100% of the damage. But if you're trying to attack the ones in the second row, it's going to drop to like 80% of the damage. And then when you attack in the third row, it goes to like 60%. Like there's a, depending on where the enemies are, like you said, how much you actually hit them dictates like the actual damage. And
I don't think I even found that window that you're talking about where it actually tells you.
You know when
I stumbled
how you
upon it.
learned that when you lose 50 battles in a row, and you just want anything, any kind of hint, any kind of clue that just like get me past this damn freaking battle.
Right.
I was going to say, did either, in Legend of Legacy, was there a problem with the game sort of hand-holding or tutorializing, too much? Because it seems like this game, they, don't tell you anything.
No, there mostly
wasn't.
the same.
Yeah, it was very similar even down to the difficulty spikes. Because one of the things that I remember with The Legend of Legacy is that I would be really enjoying it, and then it'd just be like, here's this boss that's way harder than anything you have even dreamt of up until this point. And then I'd work my way past him, and then sure enough, a couple hours later, there would be another boss that would be just absurdly difficult from the enemies even right nearby.
Yeah, and the Legend of Legacy had weird stuff that's not in this game, such as if you used magic of a certain element, it would change the dominant element in the battlefield and give you some advantages, or give the enemy some advantages. So that's not here, thankfully. But what is back is the whole formation thing.
Yeah. I think that 5 characters might be too many for this battle system.
Well, the Legend of Legacy had those formations, but you started out with very few of them, and you needed to unlock new ones.
Yeah.
In this game, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to unlock more. I seem to only have 5 formations, and it's very limited what I can do with them.
You'll get to a point where you get to make your own. Literally, just make
I'm looking forward to that.
That's actually how I ended up getting past the incredibly crazy battle. Was that I was like, okay, one of the things I discovered is that having played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's worth having a tank to just kind of sit there and take the beating. And I figured out that if you put a tank in the front row, they can block everyone behind them.
Right, as in guard, yeah. So when the attack position gives you 25% more damage, you do 25% more damage. When you're in defend position, you take 25% less, and support makes kind of a healing spells 25% better.
Yeah.
But then if you're in the front row and you're guarding and you're using the shield, you're basically taking the damage for the whole party, which is very helpful. And that was key in The Legend of Legacy. And I kind of figured that, in this game it would also be important. But so far in where I'm at in the game, I don't have kind of the flexibility enough to really play with that.
You'll need it eventually.
Well, I was going to say where you are in the game, and I feel like pretty much up to the it's sort of in I guess maybe 3/4 of the way, pretty much the battle that David's alluded to being sort of the spike of the game. Up to that point, I didn't even really need to mess with formations at all. I just kept them sort of all in the front row, all with that sort of plus 25% attack, and I never had any problems. I mean, and that's sort of the weirdest thing to me, is not necessarily how much of a spike in difficulty certain fights are, was just the complete lack of difficulty up to that point.
The first 5 hours are a joke.
Yeah, there's no fights that really required me to do much aside from just sort of spam attacks and be okay, and then I can. What's nice is you can sort of turn battles up 2 or 4 times faster. So it was able to. It's nice to sort of blast through those sort of cannon fodder enemies out in the world, because they're not going to really damage you very much, and by the time they would do enough damage to kill you, you already polished them off.
Yeah, and so that's something the regular enemies don't take much work at all to dispatch. So that's the unfortunate thing. They don't really teach you how to use the formation thing. But it is important, and it's probably better, like, if anyone decides to pick up this game after they've listened to us talk about it, it's probably a good idea to decide in advance who's going to be your tank, who's going to be the person who does damage, and who's going to be your support, because when you're using a skill, you can level it up, and you level it up based on the position that you have, attack, guard, or support. And so it's better, you're better off leveling as early as you can the position that you're going to keep your character in. Because, like if you, if like you, Casey, like everyone just puts their 3 or 5 characters on the front line in attack mode, you're just going to be leveling up the attack position, and so it's probably going to make it harder down the line to try and kind of reassign someone to a support or a guarding role.
Yeah, it's definitely good advice, because the other, like you said, the way I ended up getting past this battle is I ended up grinding, going back to an old save and grinding, and I did exactly that, where I, after being beat up so much, I kind of knew, okay, well, these are the hurdles I got to get into. I obviously need a tank, and so I set the one character in to the front line, gave him a shield, and just let him awaken the abilities, because you basically you use whatever you're using is the only thing you're awakening. So if you're using a shield, the only new skills that will awaken are shield skills. So it really, like, the design of the battle mechanics really, like, the earlier you can kind of decide on, okay, this character's speciality is swords and attacking, this guy is shields and being a tank, like, you're just better off, because you're going to awaken the higher end skills, as you get through the game. And it's the same with the points too, because I found that the talent points that you get at the end of a battle were kind of sparse. Like, if you think that you're going to,
it's so
low.
Like
you can't be like, oh, well, I really like Gael or Gael, and and I'm like, oh, I want him to have like a bow and arrow and a sword, and it's like, and then you get into the talent points, and there's only enough, really, like, pick one, because if you try to spread it out, like, you're toast. Like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's funny because it's going to take you maybe, like, for the lower upgrades, it takes you 1,500 points, and you get maybe 8 per battle, so that's a whole lot of battles. And it's funny because you can chain together battles. Like, you can see the enemies on the map, and they can follow you around if you try to escape them. And if you get into a battle with another enemy in proximity with the one that was chasing you, you're going to basically have 2 battles in a row. And that gives you bonus, what did they call them? Like talent points?
Talent points, yep.
Talent points. But so I was like, oh, yes, okay, so that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to chain battles and get tons of points. No, it gives you like 1 more point.
I know, it's
like,
such a joke.
It's so not worth it.
And it's such a pain half the times to even get them close enough to chain, Like, there's been plenty of times where they looked pretty close and it just wouldn't chain them together. But like you said, you end up getting such a minuscule added bonus. It's like, well, I'll just fight them one and then the other one afterwards.
I'm curious if my my favorite mechanic is from Legend of Legacy, which is when you're knocked out. Let's say you had 300 hit power, and you use one of your characters, like you use medicine or you use restoration, and they wake up. They don't come back with 300 hit power. They come back with 200 hit power, or 150 hit power, or 50 hit power. Like, it's, I couldn't believe that when someone's knocked out, when you wake them, when you revive them, they don't come back with their full stats in battle.
I don't remember that.
No, I think, unless it was in a different game, but no, I'm pretty sure it was Legend of Legacy. You don't get as much health back until you go back in town and rest at an inn, and then you get your full maximum.
That's exactly
health.
Because they're in this one ridiculous battle sequence. Like, I would lose people, they would wake back up, or I would heal them back in battle, and then I'd go to the next battle, but then I'm like at 50% of the health I had in the previous battle. Because you're in this chain of battles that you can't get out of. Like, you can't just exit and go to an inn So you're basically like relying on the fact that, let's hope that I don't need that 300 hit power because now I only got 150.
Yeah.
But then the next battle is that much harder than the one that I just beat. So.
Yep.
I'm not looking forward to getting to the back half of this game.
Like I said, never avoid any battles, Neil.
Yeah. I did early on until talking to you guys. Then I got scared straight.
Well, like I said, I would have, if I didn't have the warning from David, I cannot even imagine how badly I would have gotten clowned. Because, like you said, you sort of need to split up your party at some point, and then it's like you need to make sure you have all those roles sort of accounted for in the miniature parties. So it's like, unless if you don't have a good idea and you didn't plan properly, you're going to find yourself in a real sort of bad situation. And like David said, he had to re-roll an older save, which, that to me is never really a great feeling, especially when you go to save and it only appears like there's a single save slot, unless if you look closely and it's either X or Y, and then you can sort of do the multiple saves. But I could only imagine if you didn't have that extra save and you sort of got stuck, like I don't even know what you might have done.
You know what a good feeling is, though, is when I beat that final ridiculously long battle sequence and I got past that spot. I put my 3DS down, I got up, and I cursed and sweared at that boss, told him to eat it. I might have used much stronger language than that.
Yeah. Is your 3DS in two pieces or one piece?
It's still in one piece, but there was a high sense of euphoria after that win. But it was a nasty spike.
I was going to say what I do sort of like is how with the talent skills, as we were sort of talking about before, you sort of, when you know which one you want to invest in, you can get into the novice, expert, master, heroic, legend talents, which reduce all of your SP consumption for your skills. And I mean, for me, that was huge because you'd be able to get really powerful skills that would either require, no SP, so you could just spam them forever, or, when you start getting to the really strong ones, even if it's only 2 SP and, you have 30, you can sort of never have to worry about it. And then they refill, I don't know if it's instantly or I think maybe it's just by traveling, but I never really ran into any situations where, like, my SP would be, like, drained,
It refills battles. In battle. Like, at the end of the turn, you get one back.
One back.
And then
But then I think at the end of battles, I think it either all comes back or if you walk,
because
it just recharges.
Every battle it seemed like I'd be fresh.
Yeah,
because in the beginning I'd be sort of weary of spending the SP. I didn't want to run out, and then all of a sudden you're actually like, well, the game sort of encourages you to just keep using all those skills. So I like that aspect.
I find the whole talent points thing really, kind of funny because it's as if they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. No, we don't have a traditional RPG leveling up system. We're doing our own thing, or we're doing Saga's thing, and then they have the talent points thing to offer kind of something just in case. You go, battle after battle, and your character never, their attributes never go up. You got to have something, so that seems to have their solution. Give you those points that you can maybe invest in an increased chance that your characters are going to level up faster. I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah, because the economy for it's all messed up, and that it just increases so slowly that. Like, I am I the only person that played through the demo before starting up the game?
I did too.
Okay, yeah. You get a boost to talent points, depending. I think, like, I didn't, like, max it out, but I think you could have maxed it out. I think you get, like, 4,000 points per character or something like that, which, like, that helps a lot. That helps out a lot early on, but it's just that the grind to get anywhere with talent points is so slow that it's, like... I mean, it is a leveling up system, but it's a leveling up system that, like, okay, I bumped up, and I'll check this in about 5 to 10 hours of game time, and maybe be able to boost another thing up.
Yeah, 4,000 points doesn't go far. Like, especially, like, one of them is 1,500, and that's for the increased chance of awakening a power.
Yeah, I think with like whenever I'd run into a new character, I would do whatever their weapon that I was committing with them to, I would do the like SP lowered by 1, and then the increased awakening chance, and that would be my 4,000.
Yeah, and that's only for the specific weapon that you chose. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to, and that's another thing where like you have to commit to whatever weapon, because if you commit wrong, then like you're kind of hosed. Like that's why like when I would get new characters, I would be I wouldn't commit right away, because I'd be like, all right, I got to make sure like I want to use the axe with this guy, or is this dude gonna be my bow and arrow guy? I don't know yet.
You won't believe this, but one of the 2 first characters that you have, like I went and I saw that she had a staff, and so I just went, oh, okay, I'm going to go upgrade her staff with the talent points. And then so I click on something, and then I commit to it, and I've invested the points, and then I realize, oh shit, I just upgraded the spear. And the icon is kind of similar.
Then there's
Yeah, because they have like, it's like little sword, big sword.
Yeah.
There's too many weapon
and then
options.
there's the 2 different magics too. There's signomancy and sorcery.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh God.
I mean, well,
It's like it's not a bad game. It just has so many weird decisions, and I don't think it comes together all that well. Like I will have a lot more to say about this. I'm reviewing it for Nintendo Force for the next issue, but thanks to print deadlines, I have like another 2 weeks to play it. So I'll be playing a lot of it in the next week and a half or so I can write the review before PAX East. But like, it's not terrible. It's weird, and
For me, it was like whenever I was playing it, I never really truly had a bad time. I mean, that difficulty spike was annoying, but for the most part, when I'd play it, I found myself enjoying it. But it was when I put it down, like it didn't have that hook to make me be like, oh, I want to get back in there and play more. And it was more like, all right, maybe I should play some more of that game, because I know we got to talk about it in a little bit, And then, like I said, when you get into it, I have a good time, but it just doesn't have that one thing, or like you said, it doesn't come together to make me want to keep playing it.
Yeah, no, for me, like I'm still trying to recapture whatever, recapture my youth. Recapture whatever. I grew up. My first RPG was Final Fantasy Legend 2, and I was completely befuddled me, but I powered through it despite not really knowing English at the time, and not like it was my first RPG experience. So it was kind of a I don't know. Maybe I didn't. It was poorly chosen. Let's say it's not the most newcomer friendly, and but I really enjoyed it, and so it carries a lot of I don't know. Like I wish that I enjoyed these saga inspired games more than I do, but I don't know. I'm willing to give them a shot. It's just that, as Neil said, like they don't really gel together, and I wish. That they were not I don't mind playing flawed experiments. I just wish maybe this one was not so flawed.
Yeah, that was my big hope with this, is that I would consider The Legend of Legacy a flawed experiment. Like, there was a lot that I enjoyed about that game, and there was a lot that kind of bugged me about it, but I saw a lot of potential there. So when I heard that those guys were making a new RPG, I was very, very excited. And
I heard this one was better.
Yeah, but this just seems like a horse of a different color. But it's like it has a lot of the same issues, just in a slightly different presentation, and they make more risks, take more experiments and everything, and it just doesn't solve a lot of what bugged me about The Legend of Legacy, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, I was kind of back and forth on what I thought of it. Like, I think you really need to be. I don't know if you need to be a seasoned RPG player, or just like you definitely need to enjoy grinding, because there's going to be lots of grinding, and you need to really enjoy the complexity of battle systems, because after you've gotten dummied a few times, you're going to start looking into the weeds. You're going to be getting into the deep mechanics. So I mean, if those are the things you like, then I think you you'd enjoy the game, but nothing blew me away. Like, I was kind of like Casey, where it's like, yeah, I'm playing, it's fun, but there's not that pull of, well, just, maybe 10 more minutes. Like, when it was time to put it down, I'm like, yeah, I'm all right, I'll get back to it tomorrow. Like, there wasn't that real draw. But I mean, if you like Legend of Legacy, if you enjoyed that game, I think there's enough here that if that's what you enjoy, you're probably gonna enjoy Alliance Alive. But if you're kind of more of a casual RPG, you might get frustrated pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a weird game.
Yep. It's an acquired taste.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, really, is acquired taste. But, yeah, and yeah, there's just so many little things where it's like the guild building I was excited about, but then I just thought it was underdeveloped. I think that's another theme, is that there's a lot of things that I just felt like, yeah, you're on the right track, but why couldn't you have gone a little, forget about a couple other things and then just focus on these things, because these are the ones I like.
Yeah, like I said, the guild building, or like the whole aspect of, all right, we all need to sort of branch and come together and to overcome, what needs to be done. And I sort of like that, but like you said, it never really developed. It was sort of like, oh, okay, like you just went and did something real quick, and then that was sort of, oh, all right, move on to this other thing. And it was like, I wish they sort of did more with that, because that, like you said, that was, to me, the interesting part was like, okay, we're going to sort of come together. Like you said, the story doesn't really give you one main protagonist. It's like, all right, it is a group effort. Let's do this. And then, like you said, once you get the group together, then it's sort of like, all right, well, all right, there's no more really story bits really, driving that whole aspect. And just, like you said, that's what's frustrating. There are good things in this game, and it just didn't all come together as I'm sure they would have hoped.
What a bummer.
I feel bad, especially with you and Neil on the relatively early side of things, to be putting such a damper. But
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll switch from this to playing Romancing Saga 2 on the Switch. And I still want to give this type of game a shot, but maybe the Alliance Alive is not the one that I should keep playing.
Yeah, David and I jumped over to Ni no Kuni 2, so already enjoying that.
Chrono Trigger is on the agenda, right?
Yeah, that's nice and soon too.
Like I got Chrono Trigger on the go, Ni no Kuni 2, and Earthblock. Those are
You're a madman.
Yeah.
I need that third arm still, but I'm balancing the three pretty okay so far. Until I've realized I need to write notes, because what I was remembering from one game, I'm like, oh yeah, that was nope, that was the other game. Nope, wait, that was the other game.
I did that.
And what I like the most about the Alliance Alive is the Ghibli inspired visuals. Wait a minute. Yeah. Wrong game.
Yeah, there was Ni no Kuni 2 would be better if there was voice acting.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, crap.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, we're all kind of like, maybe you like it. Lukewarm, I guess would probably be the best way to put it.
My enjoyment was on the, I don't know, was going up recently, as I kind of did some of the Back to the Future tooth stuff that I described earlier. But yeah, we'll see. If I hit a wall and it just becomes completely unenjoyable, I might just put it aside.
I feel like we sapped all of Guillaume's enthusiasm for the rest of this game.
Well, we'll see. No, I knew there was a risk, of that happening. That's the thing with RPGs, right? They're so freaking long that you're kind of bound to hit a point where it's just not as good as the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think the way I would summarize it is like, if you know what you're getting into, then don't cancel your pre-order. But if you kind of have no idea what this is, but you kind of like RPGs, this might not be the right fit.
Yeah, there might be better options.
wait for Shin Megami Tensei.
Strange
what's
Journey.
it called? Strange Journey. Yeah.
Deep Strange Journey or whatever it's.
I think that's
I forget what the
Thirsty
English
Mage
name
too.
is.
Well, that's the other problem too. Is like for me. So in January I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2. In February I played Radiant Historia. At the end of February I finished off the last quarter of Persona 5, and then it was this. So it had a hard act to follow.
A couple hard acts.
Yeah. Well, does anybody have any final?
I think we said it all.
Well, so I guess I'll say if you were considering purchasing it, hopefully our review has helped somewhat make up your mind one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Guillaume and I are lucky we have the luxury of not finishing this one.
Yeah.
If you so choose. So be sure to subscribe to The Thirsty Mage. We're on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. So any of the three. That way you can get this great RPG content straight to your device. So the way that we're doing it right now is that we're still on... So NWR Connectivity is getting the main Thirsty Mage. And then we have a second actual Thirsty Mage podcast as well. That will get like the weekly like stuff like reviews, looks at developers, like a lot of little things that you might enjoy. So what I would tell everyone is we have a lot of podcasts that you should subscribe to, all of them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Radio Free Nintendo, Talk Nintendo, Connectivity, and The Thirsty Mage. Make sure all 4 are subscribed.
And Cube Fight might come back this year, so subscribe to that too.
Yes.
And they all come together at
one.
NintendoWorldReport.com, so go there too.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I want to thank Casey, Neil, and Guillaume for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for
It's
having me.
always a pleasure to come talk some RPG goodness with some good people.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
No, thank you for coming. And this will be released Monday, kind of a little bonus. And then Tuesday is a very, very long discussion with James Jones and Seren McNulty about Persona 5 and the Persona series in general.
That's probably a doozy.
Yeah, I can only imagine you'll need to be connected to Wi-Fi to download that one.
I do know. I know that Seren considers Persona 5 to be the best RPG ever made. I think it's her favorite game. So
I feel so bad for not finishing that game. I need to go back.
I'm
feel,
okay with it.
Yeah, I feel a little remorse for having no desire to play that game.
Yeah. Anyway, we're not. There's a reason why we were not invited on that podcast.
There's also a reason Casey bowed out.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you know what? I can't go beat that game.
Yeah. And I think Donald dodged a bullet because initially it was going to be Donald and Seren. And then at the last minute, the nor'easter on the east knocked out Donald's power. So about 30 minutes before the pod, I had contacted James and said, "Yeah, you want to be a third?" And
He's like, I got 6 hours. Sure, let's talk.
he only started his day at 5 a.m. and ended it at 2:30. So
Woo! It's a doozy.
it was a fun
Good
time.
Lord.
Yeah.
Cool.
Work hard, play hard.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for listening and invite everyone back for future episodes of The Thirsty Mage.
Yeah. Chrono Trigger.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye.